Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Employability World Tour webinar focusing on the job search in the United States. My name is Floriane Lambert. I work within the EMLYON alumni team, and I will be your moderator today. Thank you very much for joining the penultimate session of our series of webinars called Employability World Tour. This series of monthly webinar is a world tour to meet EMLYON alumni and recruitment experts around the globe. And the objective of this webinar is to present the employment specificities in 10 different countries. We have already covered 9 countries, so Morocco, Germany, United Kingdom, China, India, Japan, Australia, and Brazil. If you are interested in one of these countries, the replays of the webinar are available on the EMLYON alumni platform. So these webinars all take place on the second Tuesday of each month until July 2022. They are, of course, free of charge and open to all EMLYON students and alumni. You are more than welcome to join us for this world tour. So today we are going to discover a very attractive destination as far as employment is concerned, so the United States. I would like to say a big thank you to our 3 speakers, Aude, Kirana, and Grant, who will share their expertise and knowledge of the American job market with you today. So just a quick note on the technical aspects of this webinar. So please stay on mute during the speaker's presentation. However, you are more than welcome to open your microphone during the Q&A session. If you have any questions during the speaker presentation, you can also write them down in the discussion box. Also, if you want, you can also open your camera. Please note this session is recorded so that it can be shared with the alumni or students who could not attend the webinar today. So now I'm going to share my screen and I will turn to our speaker so that they can introduce themselves. So women first, Aude, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Florian, and nice to meet you all. So I'm Aude Wonsanga, I'm a partner at Alira Health. I graduated from EMLYON in 2012, as you can see on the screen, so a few years back. I'm based in Boston. I'm a partner at Alira, as I mentioned, based in Boston. I've been in the US for about 7 years now, and I started my career in Paris. Alira is a healthcare dedicated strategy consulting firm, which diversified into many other services, still serving the healthcare industry, including medtech, pharma, digital health companies, with services spanning market access, regulatory, clinical trials, management consulting, as I mentioned, but also transaction advisory. I'm also a registered investment banker in the US and work with our transaction advisory team, which helps companies grow through acquisition or harvest value through divestments. And in management consulting, I will handle everything from growth strategies, commercial due diligences when there are deals involved, portfolio prioritization, and many other topics. Mainly work in the medtech industry and also serving some pharma clients. Very happy to be here and looking forward to this exchange with you today.
Thank you very much, Aude. Grant?
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Grant. So I was in the MBA program in 2009. I am American, but I spent 10 years living in France, mostly in Lyon, and have moved back and forth since. I'm currently based in Lisbon, Portugal, but spent the last almost 7 years in New York City, working in the advertising technology sector. So a lot of experience kind of both on hiring, both in the United States and in Europe. My background is really kind of hybrid. I have a very weird kind of career trajectory. So I've kind of bounced back and forth between independent consulting, working inside of corporates, and now I work full-time as an advisor. So with clients in primarily the advertising and media technology sectors, on everything from new product strategy, go-to-market strategies, and M&A. I work with a handful of private equity funds as well, who are involved specifically in the ad tech and media technology space.
Thank you very much, Grant. And now we have Kirana.
Hello, everyone. I'm Corinna. I graduated from the MBA class in 2014. And after leaving the MBA program, I moved back to the US. I'm American, but moved back to the US to actually launch my, my first startup. So I worked full time for 5 years in the startup space as a founder and operator, and mostly in med tech digital health. So a lot of overlap there with you, Odd. After raising a little bit of money and growing my final company that I was working on out in LA, I actually left the startup space and moved into advertising technology and moved to Seattle. So the last 3 or 4 years, I've been working in advertising technology, and now I'm a staff product manager at Walmart Connect. And Walmart is, the largest retailer in the United States, is playing in the retail media space. So my thread from digital health to advertising technology was I always worked with highly regulated and important data that needed privacy compliance. And so my main role within Walmart Connect is on their data foundation and identity space. So I look forward to talking to you all. I have also, throughout all that, worked a little bit with French companies who were looking to come into the US and understanding the American landscape, for either from the medical side, learning how to launch new products here, or operations, just learning how to grow their business in the US. So love to be here to talk to you guys about my experience and advice I've both received and shared around the job market here in the United States. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you very much, Kirana. So we are going to start this webinar with the first part. Grant is going to present the employment situation, industries, and employment trends in the United States. So we have an overview of the job market today.
Cool, thanks. So, I mean, we're talking about the US. Everybody kind of knows that the US job market is very hot right now. There's a lot. It's what I would describe as very tight and dynamic. So you have both a lot of jobs that need to be filled and a lot of people jumping from job to job. So that creates a lot of opportunity in the market, both for job seekers. I would say it's actually kind of a job seekers market right now. A lot of people are quitting roles, moving into new roles, and hiring has actually become very, very difficult. I mean, when I was in New York just prior to the pandemic, we were hiring, I don't know, probably 100 people a year. And it was relatively easy to do compared to now. Like I look at what are some of the salaries in New York, for example, that are happening even for junior staff. And it has significantly increased. So hiring is very difficult right now, which is great. If you do have the opportunity, and Odd's going to speak here in just a little bit about, how do you create the opportunity to work in the United States. But if you are able to access the job market there, there is a huge range of opportunities available, and a lot of jobs that are open and people are looking to be filled. I think, it's quite different from, it's probably the most like liberal job market in terms of like people's willingness to come and go as well. So we've had people, for clients that I work with as recently as this, the past few months, we'll make a job offer to somebody. They will tentatively accept it, only to accept a better offer and drop our offer, within a few weeks. So it's very, very quick moving, and it's there's just a lot of dynamism. In terms of where the opportunities are, again, the United States is a huge internal market. It's 330 million people. So there is everything. It's where the headquarters of most, a very large number of major global corporations are based. So it's, whatever you're into, you're going to be able to find opportunities there. I would say, just anecdotally, and the others can speak to this, I know from my background in media technology and ad tech, we see a lot of specifically French management and engineering talent in that space. It's how I got into the industry. And so you see a lot of kind of the dual management and technical roles. I personally know a lot of specifically French people who've been able to go into those roles because of the strong engineering culture in France as well. So also, obviously, the US, if you visited, you're aware, it's very big. So you can treat the different job markets, even if people are able to work remotely, they have very specific and unique cultures from New York to Boston to Chicago to LA. And that's where in kind of those major hubs is often where we'll find the probably the most interesting opportunities. As I said, I wanted to put a little number in here. Unemployment rate is very low right now, 3.5%. Probably the most interesting question right now is how is this all going to play out over the next, say, 18 months, as recession signals are flashing right now. But in spite of some kind of sector specific layoffs that we've seen recently, I know at least for the clients that I work with, it is still very, very challenging to hire people, which if you're looking for a job is probably a pretty good sign. So that's all I got.
Thank you very much, Grant, for this overview. We are now going to hear Aude sharing some tips and some useful information on the immigration parts.
Yeah, and then you give me Grant the bad cop hat, right? So Grant told you how great is the market, how the employment rate is low, and how the market is favorable to job seekers, which I can only agree with you. And thank you for this presentation, Grant. Can only agree with you. I think the inflation on the salaries was about more above 5%, up 5% last year, which also gives a good overview of how favorable is the market for job seekers. But let's talk a little bit about the but now. So we have, as people in the US, we often hear about people wanting to come to the US and just applying online. So just you will go online and start applying for jobs and job description, and then you will never hear back, and you don't understand why. So here there is one thing which is very important to understand for the US market, particularly if you don't have a US passport, or you don't have a spouse with a valid visa that you're going to have to obtain a visa to work in the US. And to obtain a visa to work in the US is most probably going to be mainly two ways. Either you're a student in the US and then you move to OPT, and it's easy for you because you're already on the territory. If you're abroad, you're going to have to obtain a visa from sponsorship, actually, from your employers. And the US government has been particularly tough at protecting the US job market by making immigration processes quite costly and time-consuming for employers. So we're in a situation where employers will tend to favor, as wanted by the government, will tend to favor, obviously, people who do not require sponsorship. So the first thing that I would advise you to do is really to see how you can get this visa to work in the US. Employers the first easy one, and I know that some of you are still studying and most probably are still able to qualify for the VIE, which is the easiest way actually to come to the US for a young professional. Student visa is already mentioned, and internal mobility will actually be the third best way to come to the US. It's very difficult to come to the US except you're an exceptional person, which I'm sure you all are, but from the US standpoint, less of you will qualify. It's difficult to come to the US if you're not coming through a VIE, if you're not a student in the US, or if you don't have internal mobility opportunities within your company. So what I wanted to do here is to state, the main visas. I mean, none of us are immigration specialists, economists. We are really sharing what we see on the day-to-day, our experience, and what we see on a day-to-day basis. So here I've listed four visas. The J1 is an exchange visitor program through the VIE. So again, if you are less than 29 years old, honestly, consider the VIE. There are resources at the bottom of the page. I'm sure most of you or all of you have heard about the VA program. You just need to be a European person and less than 29 years old to qualify, and there are tons of jobs posted on the, I think it's Business France, you can see on the bottom. And this program is attractive for employers because it's easy to manage and it's cheap for them, but it's also attractive for job seekers because by definition it's it's dedicated to really highly qualified people, and it's an easy way to come on the market. Then you have the L1, which is for intra-company transfer. You need to be in your company for more than a year, and then obviously to talk to HR to get to be able to be transferred. You have to be in general in a managerial position or executive position, or have specialized knowledge. So specialized knowledge to US standard, I would encourage you to look at the definition, but in general, it's not that easy to obtain. I just had someone from our French office who was refused L1. He's a pharmacist plus, I think, ESCP. I know it's not such a great school and not as good as EMLYON, but still quite a nice school. And then he's been working in consulting for, I think, 2 years and with us for more than a year, and he didn't qualify for specialized knowledge. Too young, not enough experience. So you can tell that even with his background, obtaining an L1 is not that easy. So the alternative for us was to have him come on an H1B. The H1B for highly specialized knowledge, exceptional merit, ability to ability to work with the Department of Defense. And then there is also one for fashion model, which was very funny for me to copy paste here. So if you're a fashion model, maybe you have more chances to get the H1B. But the H1B is a visa that does not require tenure in the company. Again, this one is actually submitted. First, you need to have very specialized skills, but also you need to go through the lottery, which is one issue. I think last year the rates of the lottery was like 20%. So you can see between 20 and 30% is the selection chance of being selected. It depends on the year, but it's not extremely high. So it's something that obviously remains risky and not 100% secure. And then the last one, that you have other visas, right? But the last most common one is the E2, which is for investors and entrepreneurs, and everybody actually working around them. So if you join a smaller company, startup style, a few people, and you are like number 2, number 3 in the company, then obviously you will have more chances to get this E2 visa. Some much larger companies, it's called a French visa, sometimes in New York, because some larger companies, some banks got some E2. I don't think that the US government will grant this again, but this is another option. So smaller companies have actually a far better chance to get the visa. So, insights on visas, you can look into website. I think the bottom line of all of this is that applying directly on job posting in the US is going to be most probably a waste of your time if you do not anticipate the immigration and sponsorship opportunities for you to consider. Because the first thing that they're going to ask you is like, do you need sponsorship? The answer is going to be yes. And then, you need to anticipate what you're gonna, how you can help them get you and why you would be the best person to get. Okay, happy to answer questions at the end.
Thank you very much, Aude. I'm sure these information are going to be very, very useful to our audience. So we have a first question. I think it's more related to the first part presented by Grant. We have a question from Sandrine Faustinelli. Sandrine, would you like to open your microphone and ask your question directly?
Yeah, sure. And hi to Aude. We were in the same batch at EMLYON.
Yeah, I remember the name, right?
Yes. Hey, Grant, you mentioned earlier in the previous slide that there were a couple of job hubs like LA, San Francisco, New York, Boston. And I was wondering, do you see major differences, especially on the East Coast, between Boston, Chicago, or New York City in particular? I think you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Yeah. Yeah, I think that there are a couple of different differences, a few different differences, and Aude can probably speak to this as well. But probably the biggest one is just industry concentration. So each of those hubs will tend to have a concentration around specific industries. So New York would be finance and media. Boston would be life science, and I don't know what else. Certain types of robotics.
Life science mainly, robotics, but I think life science mainly,
Chicago is going to be more like retail, consumer packaged goods, maybe automotive, and then LA is going to be entertainment and also media. And probably a few others, but so that would be the first thing, and then just culturally around those industries, there are just some pretty significant cultural differences from location to location. But yeah, I think what I meant by that is probably the biggest difference is like the industry concentration. So if you're like, I really want to work in finance, then Odd is in Boston, but most of those jobs are going to be, or there's going to be a heavy concentration of those in New York.
Super clear. Thanks.
Thank you, Grant.
Sure.
If you have any questions regarding the immigration advice or information, feel free to open your microphone and ask them directly to our speakers.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So my question would be, for the VIE is more for French student, right? Or French people under 28. Do you know
you need to be, so it's until 28. So you need to be, if you're 28 and 11 months, I think it still works. And you need to be European. You need to have a European passport.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
Any other questions on this first part? Don't be shy. This is a great opportunity.
Just one small question about what about internships? I don't know if there's a specificity for that on the back voices or not.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, on internships, and I think that, sorry, I jumped the gun here, but I'm sure that all my colleagues will have comments here too. I mean, there are obviously opportunities for internship, difficult to get because you can, as you can imagine, lots of people are applying here. So again, it's like the stage bachelor when we were in my first year. It's like you really have to dig through your contacts and the alumni. In general, the US market actually does not have, the US universities do not grant opportunity to their students to do internship as we do in France. So the 6 months internships, they are pretty rare. Like in Boston, there are literally 2 universities out of 70 doing co-op programs, which are 6 months internships, and then the others will be summer internships. So summer internship will be extremely competitive because you're going to have a lot of students on the market, while longer internships for like co-op style that your university will enable you to do will be more. You will have more chances to get these in my opinion. But again, how to apply, since you're not going to have a lot of posts for these opportunities, first look for the post, obviously, and then second, look through your network. And we're going to get through how to get a job also. So it's going to be the same.
So I assume that short-term contracts will be the same.
Short-term contracts?
Yeah, I don't know if it exists.
So you will need to be on a J1. You will need to be on a student visa. I mean, honestly, otherwise we go back to the issue of immigration. Okay. You cannot have a non. So the internship is possible. It's going to be a student visa, or like it's going to be. I think it's going to be a J1 too. F1 is a student. Sorry, it's going to be most probably a J1. You can do that, but if you're full time, it's not going to work.
Okay.
Right, thanks. Grant and Karana, do you agree with that?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question on the chat from Harshveer.
Yes, hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
My question is about the internship opportunity, since I'm in my final semester right now pursuing luxury management here in Paris. I hold an Indian passport, and I wanted to understand if recruiters, before they pass on the profiles for interviews? Do they check the nationalities? Because based on how difficult or easy it is to give a sponsorships for work later. Do you think it's difficult to look for opportunities in New York for internships at the moment? And what's the best time to look for work? Thank you.
I think that, yeah. And also I saw the mention of Parsons. It's funny, my office in New York was a block away from Parsons. So,
oh, wow.
yeah. Yes. So, I think that, I mean, now is probably the time to start looking for fall internships, and you can find them, they exist. I mean, I had European interns. I had interns from different countries who came in and worked with us. Most of them came through some other office, or like we already knew them from somewhere else. Yeah, it's possible. I agree with what Odd said just a minute ago, though, that like your best bet is probably to get a student visa and then try to look for an internship while you're there. I don't know always what like the work authorization looks like to be able to do that, but that's that piece. And then for the CVs, I mean, yeah, they're going to ask pretty quickly if you have if you're allowed to work in the United States, or if you need to be sponsored. And if you do need to be sponsored, they're probably going to reject the application pretty quickly, just because they're not going to be willing to do it for an internship. So yeah, you would want to look at one of the options that Odd mentioned earlier.
All right. I just a follow-up question on that, since you mentioned this this thing whether we are legally allowed to work or not. In a lot of internships, while I'm applying, they are explicitly asking me if I'm legally allowed to work in the country where I'm applying, and if I'll require a sponsorship or not. So since I am at the moment not legally allowed, so I'm opting for no. And I believe my application is getting rejected there. So what would you suggest to do or not do, like any other methods to approach internships or companies, perhaps? Any tips?
I mean, it's a tough situation, because people aren't gonna, I mean, if they're putting that, so basically from the perspective of the hiring manager or the company or the HR person who's, I mean, it's an HR person who's filtering those applications, they're using that as a filter. So like, as soon as you say no, they're probably not even looking at your resume, is the reality of it. So, I mean, I don't know, Odd and Karana, do you guys agree?
I would just echo that, unfortunately for the internship, and to Odd's point that it's highly competitive because there's so many students in the like American students looking for the same thing. And then to your point, Grant, like it's an easy filter out. So I would try to get the visa, the VIE visa, and see if you can get that in hand before, and maybe you can work your network. We'll get into some of those topics of like how like in the US growing a network can benefit you, but you can do that in parallel while you're waiting for your visa, and then act on it as soon as you can start checking yes for you're authorized to work in the US.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, maybe one thing to add or to insist on, I think that, so I think you don't qualify for the VIE program because you have an Indian passport, right? So by definition, you would need a J1. Honestly, again, if you are going online, that's why I was saying before, guys, don't spend your time going online, do random job applications where you have this type of questions. At the end of the day, you're not gonna get through. So you need to go. We're gonna, as Karana mentioned, we'll tell you maybe a little bit later how to go for opportunities. I mean, you see the size of the US. Also think about what's the advantage for an employer to have you rather than someone in the US, right? So you need to find opportunities where you have a differentiating advantage. It's going to be maybe in a smaller company because you've been studying in France. Maybe it's going to be because you have some knowledge of the Indian market. So you need to think about your differentiating points. If you're applying to big companies, random jobs, where you have like zero advantage versus a US person, and you actually don't require sponsorship, there's just no way for you. It's really a waste of your time, in my opinion.
All right, thank you so much. This gives a lot of perspective. Thank you.
Thank you all. We have a question from Nanu on the chat. Nanu, do you want to ask your question directly?
Yeah, I'm in a little bit different situation because I'm already in the US these days, and I came as an L1, just for everybody to know, since you're talking about visa. So I initially came as an L1, as an executive, and now I'm a permanent resident, and I'm on the job market in the US. I'm facing this difficulty to qualify my degree as what was ESC Lyon back then when I graduated, because the definition in the US of a bachelor is 4 years of studies, and a master is rather 6 years of studies. So what, I mean, on my resume, do I have a master?
Yeah,
or do
master's.
You have a master's. Forget
You have
about
a
the
master's.
bachelor. There is no way.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Just say I have a master's in management or whatever the specialization was.
Yeah.
Okay, so I definitely need to change my resume, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you had bachelor. No, you have a master. It's a master in management. And actually EMLYON, no wait, the thing is that the EMLYON normally, because of all the accreditation, should actually qualify for the master grade, right? I'm going to tell, I mean, personal experience, I came in the US for H1B. I didn't come through the L1 through the transfer. So I came on H1B with a transfer from my company. Now I'm also on a green card. And for the H1B and green card application, obviously my degree was recognized as a master. I would never be able to get through the H1B without the master degree anyways. And also I'm actually going to Harvard next year. And obviously this was my master degree, my previous master degree, not bachelor degree was taken into account.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say master, and I wouldn't qualify it. I wouldn't feel like you need to tell the story that it's technically not that.
It's MSc in
it's a
management.
master's.
Yeah.
It's a master. Okay.
It's a Master of Science, MSc in Management. That's what I put in my resume, which I think this is what the degree is.
Okay, thank you very much. And since I'm at it, is it undergraduate or because they also talk very often
No.
of
That's
undergraduate.
It's graduate.
Graduate.
It's graduate. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I have a little bit downplayed my hands here.
you did. We're gonna get to that because I think that both Grant and I actually say the first thing is like be bold and like oversell yourself. But we're gonna get through this. Maybe we can move actually. I don't know, Florian.
Okay. I have another question. I'm in a VP position, and in many places where I apply, they very often say that MBA is highly preferred or even sometimes required. I don't have an MBA. Does that matter much when you have years and years of experience on your resume where you qualify by experience?
No.
Now that you have a master's on your resume.
Yeah, you have a master's. It doesn't matter.
It's the same,
it shouldn't matter at all. Just say you have, you could say it's equivalent to an MBA. It's a master's in management.
Yeah, it's a master's in management. Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing, yeah. So
okay,
you should be fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll take a last question before we move on to the next part. So we have Rachel. Rachel, would you like to ask your question?
Yes. So my question is, I will study in the US starting from September for 6 months. And then the project is to stay there and start my career there. But I don't really know, considering the length of the hiring process and the immigration process, because I will have to change visas because I will go there with a student visa, but then I will need another one. So when would you advise me to start my applications? Like, should I start right away in September when I arrive there, or do I have a bit of time, like 3 months? I don't know.
I mean, I think you're I don't know what the technical process would be to switch from a student to a working visa. I would say the one advantage you would have in being, it's probably not possible. Audrey's shaking her head, but I would tell you. Yeah, I would say the one advantage you have in being there physically is go network as much as you possibly can, and maybe you meet. I would aim for like a startup and become indispensable to a US startup that is launching over 6 months. That is totally possible, and they will be very motivated then to try to sponsor you to come back. I think that's the most direct path for somebody in your situation, but it's still not direct. Like you'll have to come back to Europe, apply for one of the visas that Aude mentioned, probably the E2, and then once you have obtained that, go back to the United States.
Yeah. So here, just to complete on what Grant said, Rachel, I think that first you are in a better situation than a lot of people because you're going to be in the US. And that was actually what Grant was mentioning. Get your visa and then be in the US and then do the job, right? So to your point, to your question, when should I start applying? I mean, don't think too much about applying. Think about networking and applying in India from day one because you're going to understand better the market. Because what we are telling you right now is nothing compared to what you're going to learn being there. Which, I mean, I don't know which city you are going in, but obviously, you know, you will see how to network and whom to meet. You are going for 6 months, so I don't think you will qualify for OPT. Normally, when you are in a bachelor degree, I mean, you should check that because the OPT, when you graduate from a US university, you get like a grace period where you are on OPT and you for 2 years or 1 year for that. So you need to check that. If you have OPT is what is granted from, it's an extension of your student visa that you have for, I think it was 2 years before, then might have decreased it for a year, which gives you the opportunity to work without needing sponsorship. But as an employer, honestly, when I see people on OPT, I know that I'm going to have to sponsor them as a H-1B later, and this is already not great. So again, I think that Grant gave you the best advice is that E2 and smaller companies would be your best option. And the first thing that you should, when you start working for a smaller company, will start working maybe in a higher position, you should negotiate your green card from the beginning. When you apply, you say, guys, okay, happy to join, happy to get all these very low salaries, these very high stock options, but also I want the green card application as soon as possible from an immigration standpoint.
And I would add to that, having been in the startup community, people are like, we're eager for people who are motivated to work for the company. So if that's a lever that I could pull to bring you in, I would be willing to have that conversation in a way that a hiring manager at a larger company is absolutely not.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but check your OPT status because that's going to give you a grace period. But I think 6 months, I'm not sure you will qualify. I think you need to have at least a bachelor degree, but check that. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. This was very useful.
Yeah.
You will have more opportunities to ask questions during the other Q&A sessions, but we will now move on to the second part of this webinar, which is dedicated to the job interviews in the United States and its cultural specificities. So we are going to hear Kerana sharing her view of the cultural specificities of job search in the US.
Yeah, hi. So I'm happy to share a little bit about, what's worked for me and what I advise others. And as well, I've done a bunch of hiring in my startups and in my current role. So to kick it off, definitely come prepared and ask your own questions. I think that this might be speaking a little bit to what there's a theme around like be bold. I think in the US, that's what you need to go in, like knowing that at the end of the day, you're the one that's also interviewing the company to see if it's a fit for you. And I think as a hiring manager, I've been impressed when I see that because I want somebody who's going to fit and know that, they've done their homework, that they're going to be happy in the role as well. So to start off, like know who you're meeting with and their role in the company and the interview process. And it's completely appropriate if at the beginning of a discussion, if it's unclear for you to ask, like, who are you? How do you relate to the role that I'll be working in? How do you relate to, just understanding that will give you a lot of advantage as you proceed with the discussion. And then come in with your own questions to ask the interview. Ask an interviewer. I think it's probably that's cross-cultural, but for sure in American market, it's important that you come showing that you've demonstrated you've done your homework and you have curiosity about the role. And then again, remember, you're making sure it's a fit for you. So ask your questions early so you're not surprised later or potentially even after accepting a role. When it comes to your network, I think we'll all emphasize this as well. Grow and leverage your network. And I think what we sometimes think by our network is those people that we know close. But in the US market, I found it really powerful to grow like an online acquaintance network as well. So connecting on LinkedIn with people in your industry or your target roles at companies where you'd want to be working at or just in the same like industry role, as well as like joining networking groups. For example, I'm in a women in product group. I have I have accepted offers through people I've met through these groups, and I've given offers through people who have met in these types of groups. I don't know them personally, but there's some sort of community and network effect that comes from that. As well, when it comes to leveraging your network, be super clear with your ask. I find that you can go in and say, whether the ask is, I am looking for an opportunity at XYZ company. Do you know anyone who works there? Or if it's, I'd like to get a sense of the cultural fit for myself. Can you tell me about your experience at the company? Or it's very specific. Here's my resume. Can you please send it to someone within your company? You know, whatever it is, be very clear with your ask, and you can get a lot more out of it. And it's quite common to help each other out. And like Americans in the American job market are, it's, to Grant's point very early on, it's, people are aggressively looking to hire, and it's a struggle. So anything you do to throw a bone and make it easier, people are usually willing to help. And then highlight your skills and your personality. So this is kind of twofold. You're going to interview likely with people across a lot of different teams. This is definitely the case in the tech space. And they care a lot about, okay, one, what's your function and, you know, your ability to contribute in your role, but also how well are you going to fit in with the team? And so be yourself, but don't forget to quantify your achievements. So show up with some personality, make sure you're connecting with the interviewer. And I think it matters a lot that there's besides you just meet the minimum requirements, that there's some rapport that's built. And just don't shy away from being very specific about what you've accomplished in a specific achievement. So if the question is about, tell me about a project that you worked on, don't be vague, be very specific, use metrics. And, you know, an example would be like, I did the research for and executed on a project. The metrics we defined were XYZ, and here's what we accomplished by the end, you know, whatever growth in revenue or whatever it is. I find that that's incredibly helpful especially in the US kind of interview process. So with that, I will pass it off to Grant to share his advice.
Thank you very much, Kirana. Grant, could you share with us your vision of the cultural specificities?
Yeah, thank you, Kirana. And yeah, I mean, I'm actually going to echo a lot of what was just said. Maybe a little bit more, even more on kind of the startup side of things. So I think that when I was hiring people, particularly in like high growth companies, there's a lot of just desire for people who are resourceful, who are kind of self-motivated, who can really demonstrate that they have a history of getting things done. And generally, my decision, even when filtering people very early on in an interviewing process, was to often weight that above any types of formal degrees and titles. So there was the question earlier about master's degree, not master's degree. Like, if I just see that you have an advanced degree, a graduate degree from you know, a school, period, that's enough. What I really want to see is that like you figured out a way to leverage your network to get in contact with me. That's the fastest way for you to get an interview with me, or somebody to get an interview with me. We're the few people who were able to do that. Your technical expertise, I say, is table stakes. Table stakes is like in poker, just to be able to even play the game, there's money you got to put on the table. If you don't have it, you don't get to play. So of course you have to have that, but a lot of times, at least from my perspective, it's you know, not something that we're going to spend much time talking about. What I would always really want to know is the candidate committed to participating in the company culture? Have they shown me that they kind of believe in the mission and the vision and understand it? And like I said, and this is maybe a little bit controversial, people might disagree with me, but for me personally, I always did appreciate people who would reach out directly. I thought it was, if you are resourceful enough to be able to, you know, get an intro, ideally, not necessarily cold like LinkedIn connection requests. It's always a good way to start a conversation, but it has to be authentic, and it has to be, you know, obviously respectful of the hiring manager. I think that, you know, again, being able to demonstrate quickly that you have a real interest and understanding of the company and the business. So one of the first things I used to ask people to do just to get a sense of this was to pitch my business to me. So I would ask, and this was for salespeople, this was also for technical people, I would ask them in their own words to explain what our business does. And that's a really quick way of being able to filter whether somebody actually knows what we do or not. Obviously, come in with your own questions. I want you to ask questions, and I'm not judging somebody on whether or not they down to the letter were able to pitch the company perfectly. But it's a good demonstration of knowledge and understanding of what we do. So being able to go in with a good understanding of the business and kind of almost pitch back to them what the business does is always something that I think is really good and helpful. I think authenticity and uniqueness, Kirana mentioned kind of don't be afraid to kind of show your personality and bring your personality to the table. I think that standing out from the background, there's a lot of people who are just going to come in very generically and say, I'm really passionate about, whatever it is that this company does. But I want to understand why, and I want to understand, what makes you unique for this role and what really makes you stand out against the other people. So you always want to be thinking in those terms of what differentiates me from all of the other people who are applying to this job. And then cultural fit, again, I think that Kirana mentioned just a minute ago, if you have an opportunity to talk to somebody in the company or multiple people in the company prior to speaking with a hiring manager, it's important to understand the culture of the company for yourself and for the company, because I could say that was probably, in my last corporate role, that was probably one of the biggest things that would end an interviewing process was if we didn't feel like the person was a cultural fit, because none of the hiring managers on a team want to send a candidate to the next person in the chain if they don't feel like it's a cultural fit. So that's a really big and important piece. And happy to speak more about that if there are questions. The final piece that I put was, if you want to really get ahead and kind of stand out as unique, be active on platforms like LinkedIn, do research, write about a topic, say something within industry groups like Kirana mentioned. I think those are great ways to kind of demonstrate your expertise and your motivation around a specific industry publicly. And it's a very strong signal of your uniqueness as well. So with that, I will pass it to Aude.
Thank you, Grant. Aude, would you like to share your views?
Yeah, sure. First, I mean, thank you so much, Grant and Kirana, for putting this together. I think that, totally agree with you. These are extremely good tips to apply in the US. And when I was reading that, I was like, well, yeah, it's true that it's not necessarily how a French person would think about the interview process. So I did this a little bit differently. I put myself in the shoes of the French person arriving in the US 7 years ago, and wanted to share some really what I noticed is a differentiating from the way that we perceive the American culture as French people. So I know all of you are not French, and remember that cultural specificities always will need always to be put in the context of where you're coming from. I'm using a lot of terms from Erin Mayer's book, which I love, which is called The Culture Map. I recommend everybody who is interested in learning more about how to manage cultures in business, particularly if you have a team with like 5 different nationalities. It's a very helpful book. And she talks about the low context and high context cultures. So US have a low context culture, while France will have a very high context culture. What does this mean? That in France, we will really tend to use cultural background, environment to describe a situation, use second degré, so second degree a lot. This is also the case for cultures like China and India, where people do have to read between the lines. Don't do that in the US. People will really not understand you. We really not understand you because they don't have the same culture. So whenever I feel like, well, I was trying to say things just using references. In the US, you just have to be straightforward. Be very straightforward. Say exactly what you have to say. Don't believe that people will understand what you mean by using references that they will not relate to. Do not count on people's interpretations. And I think Kirana, you're saying like, be straightforward, be clear about your ask, be clear about your ask. That's extremely important in the US. In France, we will tend to go around the topic, like if you need something, just ask for it. If you want to say something, just say it. And I have people in my team who are from obviously Americans, and now they start to understand me better, and I go back to my high context just to make fun. But I have also people from China, and the issue is that when you have low context, high context, you know it. But when you have too high context, it's different context, and that's actually much more difficult to manage. You know, people with too high context culture from different countries. So, I mean, anyways, I think the American way is very easy to take for to go after, like be very straightforward. So, and then my second point was in the US to be straightforward about what you want, what you will bring, and this has been covered by my colleagues Grant and Kirana before. You need to be very clear about what you will bring to an organization. Again, go much faster to the point that you will be in France. For instance, in France, you will tend to come with a lot of background and then say, you know, this is the context, so this is what I want to say. In the US, you can say, this is what I want to say, and if you want, I can give you the context. So that's a little bit different. The what you will bring points, I think that I will cover it also later, but it's been covered extensively by Grant and Kirana, so no need to go back on that. I also like the coconut versus peach cultures, which lead to very different differences in attitude. So the coconut culture that is really difficult to enter. That's France. They're very difficult to enter from the beginning. So people will tend to be cold from the beginning, and then when they trust you, they will let you go inside. In the US, which is defined as a peach culture, is the opposite. You will feel like you understand them, and they become very friendly. We'll talk about their family, their kids, their personal stories much easier than they would do in France. But then you will eat the nut in the middle, and this is much more difficult to go into than it is in France. So that's something that has been you know, I think that for a French person it's difficult to understand, and you will see that a lot of French people actually in the US tend to not have so many American friends, also because of this peach coconut culture in my opinion. But happy to answer that. And again, if you're interested into more, Culture Map is a very good good book to read.
Thank you to the three of you. This is very, very useful. Do you have any questions to ask on the cultural specificities to Grant, Kirana, and Aude? Feel free to open your microphone if you have any questions. No? Okay. We'll have another Q&A session if you need to at the end. So we will move on to the third part of this webinar, which is the top 3 best advice from our speakers to succeed in a job interview. So Kirana is going to be the first sharing her top 3 best advice.
Yes, and it's actually 4. So I was a little eager over here. But yeah, I mentioned it before, but first and foremost, like make sure you're building a pipeline. We talked about kind of even with the individual who's going to US for an internship. The moment you arrive, start growing that pipeline. And this is both from a networking and who you know, but as well opportunities that you're seeing or companies that you're seeing, especially in the startup space, that you could be a good fit for. So essentially at the end of the day, it is a numbers game. I kind of think of it like a sales pipeline. Just build the pipeline, bucket your opportunities or organize your opportunities and strategize your plan. There's going to be some ambitious, high-reaching opportunities that maybe for, like it's a big company and you don't think the visa process will work in your favor, but still weigh that against the lower hanging fruit that you could really potentially drive forward more easily. And what's been helpful, it's because it's such a big numbers game, is keep good notes. And in the US, because your network is so valuable, those good notes serve as your playbook for the next time you're in the job market, or if you have people coming to you asking for support and advice for who maybe you can connect them with at a company. Practice is key, again, to like all the kind of summarizing all this, like being bold and being clear and being articulate about where you contribute. Practice makes that easier, especially when it's not so natural. So hone a process or a strategy for answering things concisely with structure and clarity. So clarify the question being asked, have a plan for how you attack a question, and make sure you keep it concise so that you have enough time to get to as many questions as your interviewer wants to get through. And then again, like early on, I think it's important to interview with a lot of companies. It is a process for most companies where there's a screening call to start. Just like go through and just start practicing. Maybe go to a company that's not the one that is your dream and ideal role, and just start talking to people, get comfortable pitching yourself and the American way of engaging in an interview process. It's important to know the hiring process. So I, like everything, it's always okay to clarify. Ask early on, usually it's the first screening call, about the specific process, the timeline. It's okay to say, like, what should I expect? Like how, and I think we can be a little bit more forward in the American market. Like, when can I reach back out if I've heard nothing? And who is the person to talk to if I have a specific question about the timeline or the role or something? And then typically the way it does work is there's a screening call, which is a phone call with a recruiter. This is essentially just to weed out maybe very early on if you like just expectations are not met at all, whether from a salary front or from personality. And then there's usually multiple interviews across skills and technical capabilities, behavioral fit, situational stuff, and culture fit. This will be with a hiring manager and usually cross-functional stakeholders. That leads to then eventually an offer, and there's a negotiation period, and then you accept or decline. When it gets to the point of an offer, ask for what you want. Like this, I think we're all saying the same thing different ways here, but I advise to wait as long as possible to share your target salary range. So early on, usually in the screening call, a recruiter will say, what are you looking for? And typically it's used against candidates when you get to the end. Like if you put a number, then they'll try to use it as your highest. So I'd say, like, if you have a minimum salary that like is the only thing, like you wouldn't entertain anything below that, share that, but maybe even inflate it a little bit. And I always say, like, for myself or advising or coaching people, you can say early on, if it's the right fit, you'll find a way to make it work. And that's a way to kind of skirt around the salary conversation, but to not waste anybody's time. If you have a minimum, make sure that's communicated. And then get creative about compensation. Someone mentioned like using the green card process as a commitment. That's like one way of your base salary can't be compromised. But also think of equity, additional paid time off, flexible working arrangements. Like currently I work full-time remote on a team that everyone else is required to be in the office. So you can find ways to get creative about getting what you want if it's not just the base salary. But at the end of the day, whatever you need, if it's a green card committed to you or whatever, ask for it, and it's completely appropriate. Okay, I'll pass on to Grant.
To Grant. Thank you, Karana.
Cool. Thanks, Karana. And I agree with everything that you just said. Mine is much shorter and broader, but I would say kind of the first thing, and we've all hit on this, is be bold. Like it's okay to speak up about your achievements, to use superlatives, because any Americans interviewing for a job are going to do that as well. You know, particularly if you're coming from often European cultures. You know, Americans in a job interview process are going to be much louder. They're going to be much more open and bold. So don't hesitate to do that. It's, again, it's all a question of being unique and being somebody that they see as you know, standing out from the background. Kind of the flip side to that, obviously, is show humility. At least for me, when I am hiring people, I want somebody who's able to walk that line, to talk about achievements, and to show that they're excited about the role, but also to do so in a way that you know, indicates to me that they're going to be able to function inside of a team, that they're going to support other people, and that they bring some humility and empathy to the role as well. Again, this goes back to the question of cultural fit. I think that, you know, particularly in the kind of tech side of things, we look, you know, we rank very highly this notion of, does the person fit with the culture? And a big, huge piece of that is, do we feel like somebody's going to be able to play well with the team? So I consider humility kind of an important one. And then the final piece, and this is kind of a reiteration of something that we've said several times, is demonstrate curiosity. Show that you're really interested in what's happening at the company, that you understand the industry at maybe a higher level than even the role requires. If you're able to have, ask questions that indicate an understanding of like the business strategy or things that maybe are way beyond the role that you're actually interviewing to, that actually can be a somewhat good signal. I mean, obviously don't spend a lot of time on that, but indicate that you are thinking about those types of things and thinking about the long-term growth of the company. I think that's another strong indication of somebody who is thinking strategically and would be interesting to that we could imagine kind of advancing through the organization. So I will pass it to Aude.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you. I mean, this was great. So I'm not sure I have so much to add. So Grant, you already covered that. So don't hesitate to oversell yourself from a French standpoint and experience standpoint. Americans will, when you have the same experience, the Americans will tend to say, so this is their experience you have. A French person will be here or here. The American will be here. So oversell yourself. I mean, from a French standard, you would oversell yourself. From American standard, you will just normally sell yourself. At the end of the day, you will say two different things while you have the same skills, right? The MSc point that we were saying before. I think you have MSc, PhD, MBA. You can add all of that, Nanu, to your resume at this point. But remember that everybody's going to be interviewing at the job with the same skills. If you are French, particularly, most probably will not sell the same way. So we are seeing is actually a very good advice from Karana to that standpoint. Be prepared to describe your achievements, your contribution. I think that Karana, you were very precise on how to do that. You need, even from your resume, exactly to say, I've done this analysis and this led to that, right? And yes, you can do that with a very junior profile. I started my career at Novartis and I was doing strategic planning. Then I can tell you that it's the strategic planning that led to this price for this product. And while I was very junior, I was an analyst. You can say support. You don't say that you did it yourself. You be humble, as Grant said. But you supported certainly something that was big for the company. So put figures in your achievements, describe the process, describe your contribution. And then when you're more junior, obviously you can use a lot of your extracurricular activities to describe some of your achievements, right? If you're the president of a country club, tennis country club association, then, explain what you've been doing there. And then there is one thing which is not very French. The first one to say that is like sound nice, positive, interested in the other person and smile. This is not very French to do. It's very American to do. So that's the peach coconut situation I was mentioning before. In the US, people are often referred as fake nice because they sound overly optimistic, overly nice. You will go to the supermarket, it's going to be, oh, have a beautiful rest of the day. So nice to see you today. Like in France, that people will just throw at you your meal in a restaurant. So that's just the culture. And if you're not someone that sound nice, positive, that people will want to work with, you're not going to be taken for the job. So you need obviously to be into this mindset of positivity, which is very American, and be interested also into the person that you talk to. Otherwise, we get so many more details. These are just like things that came top of my head thinking about the question.
Thank you, Aude. So we move on now to the big Q&A session. So we have, I think, Nanu wanted to ask another question.
when you start having quite a career, I mean, do you need to go back on your achievements like 10 or 15 years ago? Does anyone care about it? Or do you elaborate more on like on your two last experiences?
I would say talk most about the experiences that relate most directly to the job that you're trying to get. So if you had an experience 10 years ago that is actually directly tied into the job that you're interviewing for, then maybe focus on that. Again, and this is at least for me, when I've been hiring people, I care less about the actual details of each experience and more about how you can demonstrate that those experiences create a through line to the role that I'm going to put you in. So if you can connect those dots for me in my mind, then it becomes much easier for me to imagine you in that role. So I would think about it in those terms.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if anybody has anything to add.
I mean, to agree with you. I mean, nothing else to add. Like, if you're applying to a senior position, then by definition, you would want to put forward your senior position roles, right? And then from an industry standpoint or anything else standpoint, yes, you can go back, I think. But I totally agree with Grant.
Thanks.
Kirana, would you like to add anything on that? Or
yeah, I'd say if it's from a resume standpoint, make sure like everything is included just so there's no big gaps in time. I think that can stand out. Or if there's a gap in time, just have an explanation. But yeah, elaborate on the ones that are relevant and be specific about how they connect the dots. So yeah, make everyone's job easier is like the MO. So if the hiring manager is looking for XYZ, make sure that is very easy to find in your experience.
okay, thank you. Farnaz would like to ask a question.
Yeah, hello. So
Hello.
I think it was Grant who mentioned cultural fit. And I wanted to ask how we can have an understanding and have a sense of the culture of the company before getting into the company for the interview.
I mean, yeah, I think there's a few things you can do. So one is obviously just to look at most companies that you're going to be interviewing with, particularly in the tech space, but you know, in probably any industry at this point, they have a communications department that is talking all the time about their culture and what's happening in their business. So, you know, you can look at the types of events that they're sponsoring or the types of things that they're doing internally and get a feeling for what their culture looks like. You know, I've worked with companies in the media and advertising space where there's a very strong, like, I mean, it's kind of an industry that's known for a very strong, like, party culture. So there's a lot of, hey, we're celebrating this and we're on a boat, and you know, whereas that doesn't necessarily work in like biotechnology. So you know, you can kind of get a feel for that from the online presence of the company, and just, you know, decide if it's even a fit for you. Like, you know, I've worked in companies before where I kind of was like, I don't really want to be on a boat anymore. So I think you can kind of do your research online and figure it out. The other kind of semi-obvious way, and to get a more realistic view, is to try to use your network to talk to people who currently work at a company that you're interviewing at and ask them. If one thing is sure that you can see from me, Americans are loquacious. We like to talk. And so if somebody asks us an honest question, we'll generally answer pretty frankly.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I would add, I'll add quickly just to look up reviews of companies too. It's to take it with a grain of salt, because usually people who speak up on the internet are the ones
That's
to gripe about.
Yeah.
But I think it can give you some insight or something worth asking more about. So if you do meet somebody who works at the company, you could say, hey, I saw this thing, and can you explain, is this true or not? But I think it's helpful to kind of do some digging across the internet and see.
Maybe one thing I would add, and I would ask Karen and Grant if they agree with that. I think that in the early rounds of the interview process, it also makes sense to ask the questions. I think, Karen, you had that into your slide saying, well, you know, as for the question, you are actually interviewing both ways. And in the early stages of the process, you should make sure that the culture is also right for you. So you ask the relevant questions. Not all of the, for instance, at Alira, we value a lot of entrepreneurship inside the company, which is not something that we're definitely going to have on our websites, but for sure it's going to come very early on into the interview process, or if you talk to someone, as Greg mentioned, from the company. So I would, early on, don't do that like at your last stage. I mean, you would not be at the last stage of the process anyway if you didn't ask the question or don't know the answer before. But in the early stages, I think it's still very fine to ask for any specific cultural, notion that you wouldn't have noticed on the website or on the talking to people. We can also checking what you heard.
A helpful way I found to ask without asking is to ask the interviewer their like favorite part about working at their company, or maybe like the biggest challenge they have working for the company, and it'll kind of come out in that, because it's, I think, hard for people to answer like, what's the culture at your company? But there's ways to like to ask for sure. Yeah, make sure you're asking questions that get you to those answers.
That's a really good tip, Kirana. I'll keep that in mind. Okay. Any other questions? So always raise your hands.
Yes, thank you. I had a more personal question, so I'm sorry if it's not appropriate, but I'm thinking of doing my next internship in the automotive industry in the US, and I wanted to know if maybe one of you had specific tips or advice for specific to this industry.
I mean, I've worked a lot with automotive in Detroit for marketing. I've run a lot of campaigns for them. I don't know that I have any specific recommendations outside of just, it's a huge industry. So there's a ton of different things you could be doing, but yeah, for automotive specifically, I mean, can I ask a qualifier? Like, is there a specific company that you're like, you want to work for Tesla, or you want to go work for
Yes, I was thinking about Tesla. Yes.
I mean, I would treat Tesla a lot more like a tech company than an automotive. The culture is very, very different. So Tesla, I would approach all of the tricks that I mentioned. I would try to use those if you want to try to work at Tesla.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We have another question from KK. I'm sorry, the name is not complete.
Yeah, I didn't expect this, so I just put a short name there. Yeah, nice to meet you, everyone. And my question is more about the format of different interviews. And I know interview is a long process, and what kind of format of interview could be? I know some big markets, some big companies, they have the online quiz or a video record and all different kind of formats. So will you have already met different kind of format of interview, and do you have any different suggestions? Thank you.
Yeah, I guess to clarify the question, you do want to understand like what types of formats are out there and what to kind of expect?
Is it any specific format for the American interviews, like a lot of online quizzes or mathematics?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that depends on the industry. I don't know, maybe Auden, Grant, you can speak to what you've seen as well. I think that depends on the industry, depends on the company. So I've seen processes, I think, to be very honest, compared to France, the interview process is much faster in the US. You can be hired as soon as, 2 weeks from starting the process. Sometimes it can take a couple months. I think in the tech industry, and depending on your function, if you're more technical, there will be technical assessments and product. Often there's like, there can be, I personally refuse and advise other people to refuse to do any take-home homework type of assessments. But I think there's more so like playing out scenario via a discussion in an interview. So like a hypothetical situation, walk me through how you'd solve it. I think that's the more common format than a quiz online or things like that. But maybe you guys have seen something else. Grant and Nod?
No, I agree with the scenario. I mentioned earlier asking people to pitch the company to me. We would walk through. I mean, these were for sales or business development, client-facing roles, but we would do role playing around those types of conversations.
Yeah. So very industry dependent. I work in consulting, so by definition, we're gonna have a few case studies. In general, we don't have quizzes. I've seen quizzes mainly for like, companies with very specific cultures. I think it's pretty rare. Biotech for sure, you will never have quizzes. So, what we do in consulting is your typical, we're going to have a role case study. This is a company, you would run a portfolio prioritization in the company. That's oral, and then we'll have an Excel case study. So in consulting or for more junior position, you can expect a technical case. And then obviously for more senior positions, you agree with the role playing and like the situation model. So yeah, that's what we do.
Okay, thank you guys. KK, I hope this answered your questions. We have another question from Vanessa.
Hello, I'm going to turn on my camera. I think it's nicer.
Hi,
so
Vanessa.
Actually, hi, thank you so much for your presentation, first of all. And so I've actually managed to get an internship in the US, but I wanted to ask you, now it's probably on me to start the visa process, right? Because the last time I did an internship in the US, it was pretty hard, and the company actually declined me at first. And then I told them like, okay, what if I find a sponsor myself? And then they were like, okay, yeah, we can work with that. And then they allowed me to come in, and I had to find a company to sponsor me, like I don't know, internship company, I guess. But like, do you know how it usually works for longer internships? Because like my last internship was for 6 weeks, so obviously they didn't sponsor me. But now for 6 months, do you know how exactly, what it means that they're a sponsor or not? Yeah.
I can keep playing the visa expert, even though I'm not. But
no, I'm just asking, like, is it?
No, I mean, I think it's going to be very dependent on the company you apply to, right? Some companies will manage the visa process for sure. You need to know the visa process for them, and you need to make things very easy for them. So you need to tell them this is what you're going to be doing. I think for an internship, you will need to. It's going to be through your academic institution. So you need to know what they will need to do, and hopefully what they will need to do is very little. So I think that's for sure. And then to your point, do you need to get a visa before? I mean, if they granted the internship to you, normally they should have checked that you're not.
Okay.
So,
because
I don't have a straightforward answer to the question. I think that you need to know the process, because honestly, not all the companies will know how to manage the G1. And I think it's very easy for them, because I think it's more like the academic institution managing the visa rather than the company.
Okay, because I asked EMLYON before and they didn't really have an answer for me, so I thought maybe I'll ask here today.
So Florian and team, you can tell to our bureau that they need to look into this. The school needs to support the students for sure. So
okay, so maybe.
So if you didn't get the answer from EMLYON, you're gonna get the answer from yourself, right? EMLYON will get the answer to the next students. You need to get the answer for yourself now.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll look into it myself. Thank you so much.
Feel free to contact us, and we can check if you have been in contact with the right person within EMLYON.
I asked our program the responsible person for the MSc in luxury marketing management, and she said she doesn't know.
Okay.
So that's why
but she's not the right person.
Yeah. Okay. I'll put our contact email address, Vanessa, and feel free to write an email onto us, and we can check together and direct you to the right contacts.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other question? Yeah, Vanessa, you've asked your question. So anyone wants to ask a last question to our speakers today? No? Is there anything you would like to add, Kirana, Grant, and Aude?
Feel free to reach out if there are questions. I think I've already seen a couple of you connect on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect afterwards as you think of other things.
Yeah, I would say the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, same here. And I just wanted also to thank Grant and Karen. I think that, it was nice to have the discussion and to see that we have matching, mainly mostly matching views on the market, and that we could share different tips, very precise or more broad. So thank you to all of you also for joining, and happy to keep the discussion.
And I also would like to add that Aude is our EMLYON alumni ambassador in Boston. So if you are interested to go to Boston for an internship or job, Aude is the one who could put you in contact with the alumni community there. So feel free to contact her.
Yeah. And also very happy to put you in contact with the responsible for the VIE chapter here. So she will be happy to answer your question on VIEs too.
Great, thank you. Okay, so again, thank you very much to the three of you, Kirana, Grant, and Aude, for sharing your useful knowledge and experience today. I hope you all had a great time with us, and that this webinar was useful. So the replay and the slides will be posted on the EMLYON alumni platform in the next days. Feel free to join us for the last destination that we're going to cover in July. So that will be Canada on the 12th of July at 6 p.m. Paris time. You can register to the alumni platform. And thank you very much to all of you. Have a great day or evening, depending on where you are. And thank you again to our speakers.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
everyone.
guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.